Welcome to Nightmare Fuel Stories. The Midnight Monitor. I never wanted the night shift at Meridian Medical Center. Nobody does. The pay differential wasn't worth the toll it took. The constant fatigue, the vitamin D deficiency, the disconnection from the normal world. But when you're a divorced father of two with child support payments and student loans still hanging over your head at 38, you take what you can get. The hospital's surveillance room was my domain from 11 p.m. to 7 a.m., 5 nights a week. A glorified closet, really, a 10x12 space with no windows, 3 walls lined with monitors, and a desk cluttered with coffee cups and granola bar wrappers. The fourth wall held the door and a sad little bulletin board with outdated safety protocols and a calendar perpetually turned to the wrong month. My job was simple: watch the cameras, log any incidents, call security if needed. Most nights passed in mind-numbing boredom. I'd watch nurses making their rounds, janitors mopping floors, the occasional patient wandering hallways they shouldn't be in. Sometimes I'd catch glimpses of drama, family members crying, doctors rushing, but mostly it was just the quiet pulse of a hospital at night. That changed 3 weeks ago. I remember the date precisely, October 4th. The night started like any other. I relieved Darren, the evening guy, at 10:58 p.m. He was eager to leave, mentioning something about meeting friends for a late dinner. "Anything I should know about?" I asked, setting my thermos on the desk. "Nah, quiet night. Camera 12 is still glitching sometimes. It says they'll fix it next week." He shrugged into his jacket. "Oh, and they admitted some guy to the psych ward, came in screaming about shadows. Standard stuff." I nodded, settling into the chair that had molded itself to my body over the past 2 years. "Have a good one, don't fall asleep," he said with a grin, the same parting words he used every night. The first few hours passed uneventfully. I rotated through the camera feeds, sipped lukewarm coffee, and tried to stay alert. At 2:17 a.m., I was checking camera 16, the long corridor connecting the main building to the east wing, when I noticed something odd. A figure stood at the far end of the hallway, perfectly still. The corridor was dimly lit at night, but I could make out what appeared to be a person in dark clothing, facing away from the camera. Hospital policy dictated that all visitors leave by 9 p.m. unless they had special permission, and this didn't look like staff. I zoomed in, but the image quality degraded. I radioed Martinez, the security guard on duty. "Hey, can you check the east corridor? Got someone standing down there." "Copy that," Martinez replied. I watched as he appeared on camera 14, then 15, making his way toward the east corridor. When he reached camera 16, he paused, looking around. He walked the entire length of the hallway, checking doors. Then he radioed back, "There's nobody here, Alan." I frowned, looking at my screen. The figure was gone. "Must have moved. Sorry about that." "No problem. Better safe than sorry." I chalked it up to exhaustion, or maybe a trick of light and shadow. But I couldn't shake the uneasiness that settled over me. At 3:42 a.m., I was scanning the feeds when camera 12, the one Darren mentioned was glitching, caught my attention. It covered the north stairwell, a rarely used set of stairs near the old part of the hospital. The image flickered, went dark for a second, then returned, and there was someone there. A figure similar to what I'd seen earlier stood on the landing between floors. This time they appeared to be looking directly at the camera. I couldn't make out a face, just a dark silhouette. I radioed Martinez again. "North stairwell, camera 12, someone's there. On my way." I watched as Martinez approached the stairwell door on camera 11. He disappeared from view, then should have appeared on camera 12, but he didn't. The figure remained unmoving, apparently alone. After a minute, Martinez radioed. "Checked all 5 floors of the stairwell, nobody here." A chill ran down my spine. "You sure?" "I'm looking at someone standing on the landing between the 2nd and 3rd floors right now." A pause. "I'm standing exactly there at this moment, Alan. There's nobody here but me." I stared at the screen. The figure was still there, but now Martinez wasn't visible at all. "Can you wave or something?" I asked. "Seriously, humor me." I watched the screen. The figure didn't move, and I saw no sign of Martinez. "I'm waving my flashlight around like an idiot," Martinez said. "You see me?" "No," I replied, my mouth dry. "I don't see you at all." Martinez was quiet for a moment. "Camera must be on the fritz. I'll mention it to maintenance in the morning." "Yeah," I said, unable to take my eyes off the motionless figure. "Must be." After we disconnected, I continued watching camera 12. The figure remained for another minute, then the feed flickered again, and when it stabilized, the stairwell was empty. By the time my shift ended, I'd convinced myself it was just technical issues with the surveillance system. Old hospitals, old equipment, nothing supernatural about that. The next night was quiet until about 1:30 a.m. I was making a routine scan when I noticed camera 23, overlooking the morgue hallway, showed what appeared to be the same dark figure, standing at the far end of the corridor. This time I didn't call Martinez. Instead, I pulled up the recording from a few minutes earlier, rewinding to see when the figure had appeared. What I saw made my blood run cold. At 1:27 a.m., the hallway was empty. Then, without walking into frame or coming through any door, the figure simply appeared. One frame it wasn't there, the next frame it was, standing perfectly still. I fast-forwarded to real time. The figure hadn't moved. I zoomed in as much as the system would allow, but the image became too pixelated to make out details. It was just a dark silhouette, possibly wearing something long like a coat or robe. As I watched, the figure slowly raised what looked like an arm, pointing directly at the camera. At that exact moment, every monitor in the room flickered simultaneously. Just for a second, a brief disruption that under normal circumstances I might not have even noticed. But when the images stabilized, my heart nearly stopped. Camera 23 still showed the morgue hallway, but the figure was gone. Instead, on camera 4, the hallway outside the very room I was sitting in, stood the same dark silhouette, pointing at my door. I shot to my feet, knocking over my coffee. It spilled across the desk, but I barely noticed. My eyes were fixed on the monitor showing the figure just outside. There was no sound from the corridor. No footsteps, no breathing, nothing to indicate someone was actually there. Just the silent image on my screen of a dark figure pointing at my door. With shaking hands, I grabbed my radio. "Martinez, you near the surveillance room?" No response. "Martinez, come in." Static then. "Go ahead, can you come to the surveillance room? There's someone in the hallway." "On my way." I watched camera 4, waiting for Martinez to appear. The figure didn't move. Then Martinez came into frame from the right side. He walked right past where the figure was standing, seemingly oblivious to its presence, and knocked on my door. "Alan, it's Martinez." I looked from the door to the monitor. On the screen, Martinez was knocking on my door, but the dark figure was still there, standing right beside him, its arms still outstretched. Martinez couldn't see it. With trembling hands, I opened the door. Martinez stood there alone. "You okay? You look like you've seen a ghost." I glanced back at the monitor. The figure was still there on the screen, now appearing to stand directly behind Martinez. Do you see anyone else here?" I asked. Martinez looked over his shoulder, then back at me with concern. "No, just us." "What's going on?" I pulled him into the room and pointed at the monitor. "Look, right there, behind you in the hallway." Martinez squinted at the screen. "I don't see anything unusual." "The figure." "Right there, pointing at the door." He studied the monitor, then me. "There's nothing there, Alan, just an empty hallway." I stared at the screen. The figure was still clearly visible to me, its featureless form now seeming to face us both. "I think you need to take a break," Martinez said gently. "When was the last time you got a good day's sleep? This night shift messes with your head." I couldn't explain what was happening. Either I was losing my mind, or Martinez couldn't see what was clearly visible on the screen. "Yeah," I said finally. "Maybe I just need some fresh air." After Martinez left, I sat staring at the monitor. The figure remained for another minute, then disappeared during another momentary screen flicker. I spent the rest of the shift on edge, checking camera 4 obsessively, but the figure didn't return. When I got home that morning, I couldn't sleep. I lay in bed staring at the ceiling, replaying what I'd seen. Was I hallucinating from sleep deprivation? Was there something wrong with my vision that made me see things on the monitors that weren't actually there? I called in sick the next night, hoping a proper night's sleep would reset whatever was wrong with me. It didn't help. I spent most of the night awake, dreading returning to work. When I went back the following evening, Darren gave me a concerned look. "You okay? Martinez said you were acting weird the other night." "Just tired," I lied. "Thought I was coming down with something." He nodded, not entirely convinced. "Well, take it easy tonight, should be quiet." For the first few hours, everything was normal. I kept expecting to see the figure, jumping slightly whenever a screen flickered, but nothing unusual appeared, until 3:33 a.m. I was checking camera 19, the pediatric ward hallway, when I noticed a child standing alone in the corridor. This wasn't necessarily unusual. Kids sometimes got up at night, looking for nurses or bathrooms. But something about this child made me uneasy. They stood perfectly still in the middle of the hallway, wearing what looked like a hospital gown. Their head was bowed, face hidden. I radioed the pediatric nurse on duty. "There's a child in the hallway outside room 412. "I'll check," she replied. I watched as she appeared on camera, walking down the hallway. She passed right by where the child was standing without reacting, then looked around in confusion. "There's no one here," she radioed back. I stared at the screen. The child was still clearly visible, standing motionless. "Are you sure? Right in the middle of the hallway." "I'm looking at an empty hallway, Alan." Before I could respond, the child on the screen slowly raised their head. Though the image was grainy, I could see now that what I'd taken for a face was just darkness, a void where features should be. The nurse was still in frame, looking puzzled, completely unaware of the figure mere feet away from her. "Never mind," I said weakly. "Must be a glitch." After the nurse left, I watched as the childlike figure turned and walked down the hallway, movements jerky and unnatural. It disappeared around a corner. I quickly switched to camera 20, which should have shown where it went, but the hallway was empty. I checked all adjacent cameras, nothing. Then camera 12, the north stairwell, flickered. When the image returned, the adult figure I'd seen before was there again, looking up at the camera, and beside it stood the child figure. They both raised their arms simultaneously, pointing at the camera. The feed flickered again and they were gone. My heart was pounding. This couldn't be equipment malfunction. This was something else entirely. Over the next hour, I saw them appear on various cameras throughout the hospital, always standing still, always staring at the camera, always disappearing when the feeds flickered, and always invisible to anyone else who happened to be in the same frame. At 4:47 a.m., my radio crackled. "Alan," it was Dr. Patel, one of the night shift physicians. "Can you check the cameras near the east wing? A patient is reporting seeing someone in their room, but when the nurse checked, there was no one there." My mouth went dry. What did this person look like? The patient said it was a dark figure just standing in the corner watching them. Probably just confusion from medication, but we want to be sure. I checked the cameras near the patient rooms in the east wing. "Nothing unusual, all clear on the cameras," I reported. "Thanks, probably just hallucinating." I wasn't so sure anymore. By the end of my shift, I was a wreck. I'd seen the figures appear on 6 different cameras, sometimes alone, sometimes together. Always staring, always pointing. Never captured on the recordings when I tried to review the footage later. I didn't tell Darren when he arrived to relieve me. What could I say? That I was seeing people on the cameras that no one else could see. That weren't actually there when others looked. That didn't show up in the recorded footage. He'd think I was losing my mind. Maybe I was. The next night was worse. The figures appeared more frequently. And there were more of them. I counted 5 distinct silhouettes by midnight. They began to move more, no longer just standing still. I watched as they wandered hallways, entered rooms, gathered in groups. At 2:15 a.m., camera 8, covering the ICU waiting area, showed 3 figures standing in a semicircle around a sleeping family member of a patient. They stood there for 5 minutes, just watching the man sleep. I was terrified they would hurt him, but they eventually moved away when a nurse walked through the area, passing right through one of the figures as if it wasn't there. The nurse never reacted. The sleeping man never woke. At 3:20 a.m., I witnessed something that chilled me to the bone. Camera 27, covering one of the long-term care rooms, showed an elderly patient sleeping. A figure appeared beside the bed, leaning over the patient. For 10 minutes it remained in that position, its featureless face inches from the sleeping person. Then the patient flatlined. Alarms must have sounded at the nurse's station because medical staff rushed in, beginning CPR. The figure stepped back, watching as they worked on the patient. Despite their efforts, the elderly person was pronounced dead at 3:37 a.m. As the staff covered the body and began disconnecting equipment, the figure reached out and seemed to place a hand on the sheet covering the patient's face. Then it looked directly at the camera, at me, before the feed flickered and it vanished. I sat frozen, unable to process what I'd just witnessed. Had I just seen death itself, or something that caused death? By morning, I was barely functional. When Darren arrived, he took one look at me and frowned. "Did you look terrible? Are you sick?" "I think I need to quit," I said, my voice hoarse. "The night shift, yeah, it's not for everyone. No, the job, I can't. I can't do this anymore." Darren's frown deepened. "What's going on, Alan? For real?" I almost told him. The words were on the tip of my tongue, but I couldn't bring myself to say it out loud. "Just burnout, I guess," I said instead. "Take a few days off," he suggested. "Talk to HR about switching to days." I nodded, not having the energy to explain that it wouldn't help. The figures had followed me home. I'd seen one in my bathroom mirror that morning, standing behind me, watching. That night I didn't sleep. I sat in my living room with all the lights on, jumping at every shadow. I called in sick again, ignoring the irritation in my supervisor's voice. I couldn't go back there. I couldn't face those monitors again, but staying home was no better. I began seeing the figures in reflective surfaces, windows, the black screen of my turned-off TV, the glass of picture frames. Just glimpses at first, then longer appearances. By the 3rd day, I was hallucinating them in broad daylight, standing in corners, watching from doorways, following me from room to room. I made an emergency appointment with my doctor, who prescribed anti-anxiety medication and referred me to a psychiatrist. He suggested it might be a psychotic break brought on by stress and sleep deprivation. I wanted to believe him. I took the pills. They didn't help. The figures kept appearing. More of them, closer now. No longer just watching, but reaching toward me. Last night, I returned to the hospital. Not for my shift. I'd been officially placed on medical leave, but because I needed to understand what was happening. I sneaked into the surveillance room during a shift change, using my key card that hadn't yet been deactivated. The night monitor, a new guy named Paul who'd replaced me, was surprised to see me. "Alan, what are you doing here?" "I heard you were on leave. I need to see something," I said, moving to the monitors. "Just for a minute." He looked uncertain but stepped aside. "Are you okay? You don't look so good." I ignored him, scanning the feeds. At first I saw nothing unusual, just the normal hospital at night. Then camera 12 flickered, and there they were, dozens of them now, filling the stairwell, all looking up at the camera. "Do you see them?" I whispered, pointing at the screen. Paul leaned in. "See what?" "The figures in the stairwell. There's so many of them now." He stared at the screen, then at me, concern evident on his face. "Alan, there's nothing there." "It's an empty stairwell." One of the figures raised its arm, pointing directly at the camera. Then, as one, they all turned their featureless faces toward a different direction, as if looking through the camera, through the monitor, directly at me. They knew I was watching, they knew where I was. "I have to go," I said suddenly, backing away from the desk. "Alan, wait, let me call someone for you." I fled the room, hurrying down the corridor toward the exit. As I passed the north stairwell door, it slowly swung open. Dark figures began to emerge, flowing out like smoke, surrounding me in the hallway. I could see hospital staff walking past, completely oblivious to what was happening. I ran out of the hospital to my car all the way home. They followed. Now I'm sitting in my apartment, writing this down while they stand around me. Dozens of them, watching, waiting, for what I don't know. I've covered all the mirrors. Turned all the screens to face the walls. It doesn't matter. I can still see them from the corner of my eye, still feel them getting closer. The psychiatrist says they're not real. That I'm experiencing a severe dissociative episode with visual hallucinations. That with medication and therapy I'll get better. But I know the truth now. I understand what's happening. They've always been there, walking among us, watching us. Following us. Most people just can't see them, but the cameras can sometimes. And now, for whatever reason, so can I. Last night I saw one standing over my bed, leaning down toward me. I felt cold breath on my face, though it had no visible mouth. I think I know what they want now, why they revealed themselves to me. They're coming for me next, just like the patient in room 27, the hospital called today. The new night monitor, Paul, died unexpectedly last night. Heart failure, they said, no previous health issues, no explanation. He saw them too in the end, I'm sure of it. They're crowding closer now. I can barely see my screen through the press of dark figures surrounding me. Their arms are outstretched, reaching. I understand now why no one else sees them on the cameras, why they only appear to certain people. Why the recordings never show them. They're not in our world, not fully. They exist in the space between life and death, between reality and perception. The cameras don't capture them. They use the cameras, the screens, the reflective surfaces as windows to look through. And once they've seen you, once you've seen them, they don't stop watching. They keep coming closer, until they're close enough to touch. One of them is reaching for me now, its dark, featureless face inches from mine. I can feel cold emanating from it, seeping into my skin, my bones, my heart. I don't think I'll be writing any